Curiously enough, race has become the hottest topic of the day. And heretofore, I enter the scene, Dr. KK, critical race theorist. And I'm here to bring you an opportunity to explore this conundrum, this issue, this identity that we are all grappling with. What is race in today's America? For me, it is a blanket which covers and makes opaque my identity. But what is it for you? Is it an emotion that riles you up, that makes you furious and angry? Is it something that you wish to ignore? Something that you want to cover? Well, it's really important for us to dig down, start grappling with this stuff, and really figure out how we, as American people, and indeed citizens of the planet even, can come together and live more humanely. On one hand, you have to know that these conversations embark upon some very touchy kinds of emotions. And on the other hand, you have to know that it's kind of ludicrous. It's kind of funny, too, to think about the different ways that people juxtapose who they think you are with who you actually are. So the first thing Key Dialogues seeks to do is uncover a space for you to think critically about the ideas of race. It's push you into disequilibrium, just make you scathingly uncomfortable so that you really push yourself to investigate what is race and how do I fit in? Through the course of many conversations and interactions, I hope that we will all begin to unpack ideas which we have deeply embedded in the core of our psyche, in our emotions, in our spirit, that we peel away these layers so that we can get down to the business of being human beings. I really want to kind of deconstruct and dig into who is Thomas Jefferson. And many of you may or may not know that he's also the author of a very famous writing called Notes on the State of Virginia. He positions persons of African descent of inferior moral character, of inferior intellect. He says, in fact, that they do have enough pain and misery to have some emotional capacity, but not quite the logic and the intelligence that they would need to express their pain, which really makes me wonder more about these people he is describing. As we really begin to contextualize these founding fathers, we also have to know that America is a country that is not only democratic, as is self-espoused by many, but it's also capitalist, which means that I'm very interested in making some money. I have no problems with securing the bag. Go Black China. Here, the transatlantic slave trade really does show how this country was founded, and it was founded on resources which were recruited, human resources, shall we say, recruited from the western coast of Africa primarily. We're often pushed between these different stations, sugar and Africans here to New England. We see rum and other goods there to Africa, and we see slaves to America. So let's think about this. Rum and other goods going to Africa. I wonder what was the purpose of the alcohol being introduced there. And did the alcohol have anything to do with slaves being recruited to work here in the northern shores, not just in the northern shores of America, but also in the Caribbean and in Southern America as well? So we know first that we had some founding fathers, people who in fact were not rule followers, who did not want to abide by European law, moral code, and requirements, and decided to abandon their native land and place their stake here in the so-called New World, even though we do know that the New World was in fact populated by Native American or indigenous peoples, of which Negroes, that's me, were being sold, right? They were transported as cargo and they were sold and placed in the capacity of a numerous many occupations, unpaid occupations here in the New World. This is Martha. This is Thomas Jefferson's wife, Martha. This is Sally Hemings. This is Martha's sister, sisters. And I think you can tell quite clearly that one of these ladies is African American or of African descent, and one of these ladies might be Caucasian, but they were sisters. This, the wife of Thomas Jefferson, and this, his baby mama. Which tells us something about Thomas Jefferson, right? Tells us something about the duplicity of Thomas Jefferson, tells us something about freedom, tells us something about this idea that African people are of intellectual inferiority, that they are animalistic. These are all things that are written in notes of the state of Virginia, but they are at once able to hold the weight of bearing our third president's 6 children, whom none of were allowed to be buried on the grounds of Monticello, which is his famous estate in Virginia. Which brings me back to this Charlottesville stuff. Virginia is probably the greatest place for any of these conversations to emerge, because they reveal the duplicitous nature of race in this country, and also reveals that there has been an extremely strong conversation as related to race when coupled with secrecy. The tiki torch is a contemporary symbol of this. These burning crosses are more of an atrocious symbol of hate to me than any statue of Robert Lee or any Confederate. But these symbols right here are really indications that persons of African descent are well on their way to death. These burning effigies were placed in churches. They were placed on front lawns. In 1965, a community of African American persons in Charlottesville was completely destroyed. And so I really want to talk to us now about this idea that we are newly encountering racism. I want us to remember that one of our founding fathers, that the third president of the United States, is now coming again under some scrutiny because of the duplicitous way in which he governed the nation and then governed his own moral character. What's to think about that? The way the nation was governed and the way that this man, and he's a human being, how he was governing his own moral character, right? I want us to remember that these tiki torches, these symbols of burning effigies, may also be related to the practice of lynching in the United States. In fact, 1919 was deemed Red Summer. In 2015, a new study was conducted which alluded to the fact that over 4,000 persons of African descent were killed, hung, lynched during Jim Crow. And I want us to think about Jim Crow ending as late as the 1950s, around the same time that we had to enact policy to ensure that certain persons of color, who are in fact American citizens, were able to access appropriate education. And still today, much research shows us that we are living in a society in which education is more strictly segregated today than it was before 1950, which to me only makes sense because before 1950, what, y'all wouldn't really let us in school. Because there were black codes and slave codes and all kind of codes against the education of persons of color in this country. I want you to notice the feet dangling there. I want you to notice the children here. I want you to notice that a climate of hate has been constructed in this country for several years, centuries even. I want you to take a look at the button-down collared shirts. I want you to look at the ties. I want you to look at the sense and the sensibility. I want you to look at the strong, upstanding moral character. And I want you to see that replicated. I want you to look at the collared shirt. I want you to see the rage. And I really want you to start asking yourself, what is the rage about? What is the rage about? In his writings in Notes on the State of Virginia, Jefferson not only suggests, but he states explicitly that Black people are inferior in body and mind. Apparently, Sally Hemings' body wasn't too inferior. I don't know. She just pushed out 6 babies, but you know, a Black girl can be a baby mama for anybody. I don't know. Jefferson's ideas have been used, I want us to think about this now, have been used by generations to support the institution of slavery, Jim Crow laws, and very plainly, racial ideas of today. As we move into key dialogues, I want us really to think about the purpose of our being here. I want us to know that this is a form, a safe form, really. And I'm not certain that I will always say things that make you feel good. And I think that uncomfortable space is a really, really awesome place for learning, right? If we continue to hide, if we continue to cover up, if we continue to make opaque what is clear right in front of our eyes, then we are doomed to repeat the same kinds of history for eons into our future. If we are to really do what Patricia Hill Collins asked us to do in deconstructing ideas of race and gender, the first step is that we must be honest about it. This is America. This country was built on racist ideology. And I want us to do the work of deconstructing. All hands in. Black, white, brown, yellow, female, male, transgender, child. Hell, I don't care if you're a tree. If you can do some work and some thinking, we need you here. Because it is time for us to all have access to freedom and democracy. Deuces. Dr. KK.